Hello everyone, and welcome back to Fan X Fiction, Salem's Journey by InariKurenai, a RWBY fan fiction. And a quick thing before we start, this story came from our very own Discord, and if any of you are at all interested in showing your stories to us and having us read them, that is probably the best way. Chapter 1.
Damn them. Damn them both.
You thought there was no greater punishment we could bestow upon you. Salem gritted her teeth, inhaling a sharp breath of air through her nose. The ashes of the fallen were suffocating, and the haughtiness of the god of darkness was unbearable. They thought they won, that she would quit her crusade against them because of the death of a measly few. She stood up, light rose-colored hands clenched into fists, trembling. Shoulders squared, standing against those that created all life on the planet. Her hardened blue eyes narrowed at the brother gods as she knit her brows, practically daring them to do their worst.
I'll come back.
She promised with a barely contained growl.
I'll tell the rest of the world about this massacre. Build a new army.
You do not understand. She could hear how amused the god of darkness was. There's no one left.
What is he? No. He wouldn't. Not because of me. They were all innocent.
He brought his skeletal face close to hers, his large empty eye sockets boring into hers. He huffed, filling her nostrils with the smell of the dead. You are all that remains of humanity. Eyes widened in horror, words clogged in her throat. She felt her heart twist and crumble, plummeting fast down its grave in her stomach.
No.
She took a step back, shaking her head at the brother gods. How could he just extinguish life like it was nothing? How could the god of light, bringer of life, father of humanity, stand by as his brother removed his children from existence? The god of light sighed.
This planet was a beautiful experiment.
Experiment? They were just experiments to them? Her close friends she'd laughed and shed tears with, neighbors she invited to her home for meals, even her beloved Ozma, who she started this whole bloody quest for, were all experiments.
But it was merely a remnant of what it once was. We will learn from this failure. I hope you will learn from yours.
The god glowed, fading to the dust in the wind.
No.
Salem rushes to his fleeting form.
You can't leave. You can't leave. Come back.
The god of light ignored her demands. He was gone, leaving his brother and her alone. Still demanding things from your creators? The god of darkness asked, and she froze at his tone. The same tone he had when he wiped humanity off the planet.
No, please. I'm sorry.
It was too late, though. The god of darkness, master over death and creator of the monstrous Grimm, flew high into the clear twilight. A deafening boom pierced her ears. She winced, cracking her eyes open and gazing at the skies. A dry, humorless chuckle left her lips. The moon, the same body of rock and metal she used to gaze upon mesmerized while she was stuck in that tall tower, had a gaping chunk ripped out of it, the pieces heading straight for her. Red filled the air as flaming portions of the moon rained hell upon the land. Salem didn't know what to say. She had doomed humanity. She'd killed them. All she wanted was revenge and freedom from the curse the brother gods burdened her.
All I wanted was to see Ozma again.
The first piece of fiery debris made contact with the planet, shaking the land. Others soon joined in with the carnage, blanketing the world with a raging inferno and planet-splitting earthquakes. Salem dropped to her knees and did the only thing she could against the terrible fate bestowed upon her. She screamed, and screamed, and screamed. She bawled until her throat was raw and in pain. She yelled until all that was left of her was an empty husk. She shrieked until a meteorite struck her head on, silencing her cries. After the massacre and the hellfire settled, Salem was amazed at how quiet everything was. It was completely unnerving. Loud, rambunctious cities that used to house thousands, silenced without a trace of them ever existing. Farms filled with hard-working families disappeared, leaving cattle and livestock to rejoin their wild brethren once more. Households carrying love and affection for its members turned to dust and carried by the wind to rest with the forgotten. Salem was alone. Taken a few decades after the massacre for her to come to terms with this solemn reality. The malevolent brother gods thought themselves infallible. Her very acts against them proved them false. The god of darkness could have missed some, and if the like of deer, bears, and other wildlife survived the bombardment of the planet, so too could humanity. They were smarter than dim-witted animals, created to be the top of the food chain and masters of the land they called home. There had to be some pockets of humanity hidden among the extensive world she called home. Apparently not. Salem roamed the large continents and charted the vast seas to search for any survivors, traversed up mountains that pierced the heavens, and burrowed into caverns that laid beneath. There was no one. Every village, island, and home was void of all life. All that remained were ashes that weren't able to be picked up by the wind. Salem was alone. Alone to suffer in the world. She prided herself in her mental fortitude, having spent almost her entire life secluded from the outside world, with the only human interaction she had being with her overprotective father. But this, though, the realization that all of humanity was gone, and she was the cause of it, didn't just break her, it destroyed her. It began with her senses. Food and water crumbled, ash on her tongue. The feel of wind and grass vanished, her nose numb. Mother Nature, muted, fading into white. Her eyes went last, the colors blurring into gray. The only comfort she had in the early years was sleep, where she dreamt of the past and of better days. Surrounded by friends that loved her, exchanging pleasantries as she entered her home, being welcomed by her loving husband, Ozma, who waited for her return. Her husband who caressed her body with loving touches, and seduced her ears with promises of the future, their future. But like everything else, her dreams that gave her strength, twisted and contorted into vile nightmares. Faces of those she manipulated into raising arms against the brother gods plagued her when fatigue took hold. Their screams of terror as the god of darkness got rid of them like they were trash. The curses they spewed at her for damning them into oblivion, for her selfish goals. She couldn't handle it anymore. Not the loneliness, the nightmares, not the guilt that wrecked her body every time she passed by an empty house. So Salem tried the only thing she could to end it. She tried to die. Salem challenged the limits of her cursed immortality, a reminder of her sins. She slit her wrists, lodged swords into her abdomen, slashed her stomach open, and hanged herself from tall oak trees. It didn't work, but it motivated her to try harsher and more inhumane methods of suicide. She tied stones to her ankles and leapt into raging oceans. Her body became a feast to the predators that prowled the wilds. She boxed herself in cramped wooden homes, entrapping her in the blazing fire she lit. She even dived from monstrous heights to be impaled by jagged rocks. None of it stuck, only the painful reminder of what she felt. Salem always woke from her death with her body miraculously healed, leaving no wounds or even scars. Her stubborn body didn't deter her. Salem kept trying, being more elaborate than the last. For centuries she tried to perfect the art of ending her life. With each trial she committed, a piece of herself was lost. The amount of time she had fallen in and out of madness in her solitude and her thousands of suicides was staggering. But it was in those moments of madness she thought of one final experiment to test, one final chance to rejoin her precious Ozma and amend her mistakes, one final chance to be put to rest. Salem arrived at the god of darkness's forsaken sanctum. The memories of what occurred here centuries ago were still fresh on her mind. She pleaded to the god to return her Ozma to her after his untimely death. The older brother god deemed her undying love sacrilegious and refused to help her when she approached him, and so she went to the next best thing. How she wished to travel back in time to stop her grieving self. The world would still be brimming with life, and she wouldn't be cursed to roam the land alone, unable to end her life and join her lovely husband in the beyond. But it would change today. She would no longer be torn from him, no longer bear the guilt of the sin that haunted her every day. She would be free. She wouldn't be alone. Salem navigated the Deadland, trekking up the steep hill to gaze at her goal from above. The only thing besides herself that the brother gods left as a cruel reminder of their existence. The Grimm liquid. If anything could kill her, it would be something the god of darkness, the controller of death, had created. She peered over the cliff, soaking in the side of the tar-like pool with its serrated rocky edges. Bubbles formed and rose a few inches from the pool of black and popped in the air. She could sense the fiendish energy from where she stood. Most would have turned around by now, afraid of just the sight of the Grimm liquid, let alone of thinking of diving in it. Salem was no longer most. She was singular. She closed her baby blue eyes, plunging headfirst into the black sludge. Pain. So much pain. Fire stroked her skin, reminiscent of the time she walked through molten lava to see if she could dissolve into nothing. Scalding heat turned into sharp strikes, tearing at her insides like an enraged Beowulf. This was it. She felt it. The unyielding soul in her body dwindling, threatened to be snuffed out once and for all. She was finally going to experience peace again. She could put all those hellish years alone behind her.
I'm coming, Ozma.
She thought with a pleased grin playing on her lips. The freezing embrace of death grabbed her whole, squeezing every piece of life out of her. She stiffened. The agonizing pain ceased. No fires licking her body, nor claws ripping into her skin. No pain. Only the weightlessness of floating. Salem's eyes widened in panic.
No.
She dived further down the pool of sludge.
This can't be it.
She clenched her teeth to silence her burning lungs, but their symmetry for oxygen was greater. She gasped for air, flooding her chest with the thick tar.
I'm so close.
Pushing against the cries her lungs gave, she plunged down the abyss.
I was right there. Damn it.
She reached the bottom, surrounded by darkness. She gazed at the sky, moonlight shimmering through black. What she thought to be endless had found its end.
Ozma.
Just like the day the brother gods forsook her on the desolate planet. She responded the only way she knew how. She screamed. She screamed until her vocal cords were non-existent, until her fury was satisfied. Salem was alone. After what felt like hours, she swam to the surface. She breached the water's edge, gasping for air, hacking and coughing out the sludge from her system. She made her way to land, hoisting herself onto land, the heavy liquid dripping off her body. Bitter tears stung the corner of her eyes. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, ridding herself of any reminders of her failures. Her breath hitched, feeling her heart thumping in her ears as her bottom lip quivered. Her hand was paler than one at death's door, and her nails were devoid of any color, a sickening onyx black.
No.
She exclaimed and prodded every inch of her body, leaving no part untouched. She grabbed and yanked out lumps of her golden hair from their roots. She paused, 3 fingers over her right eye. A shaky breath left her thin lips.
Blue. Please let it be blue.
Salem choked out a laugh, tears of blood trickling down her cheeks.
No.
Her supple skin was paler than snow, red veins riddling her flesh. Her envious blonde hair bleached into a ghastly pearl white. Ozma's favorite blue eyes, once brimming with life, blood red trapped in the void. Salem was alone, and now she was a monster.
No.
Her shaking hands clenched into fists.
No.
Red, all she saw as her frame shook.
No.
She roared at the heavens that brought those wretched gods. All her suffering was because of them. Them and their demented experiments. Why give them free will and grace them with the knowledge of love, if it was all a damned trial for something else? Why did they let humanity live if they were just going to vaporize them, if there was even the slightest error in their observation? Why couldn't they just give her back Ozma?
Damn it!
A howl meshed with her bawling. She stopped, stunned at the intrusion of her self-loathing. Grimm, a Beowulf, tore its way out of the pool of tar, stretching its long arms. The mindless creature swam, using its clawed arms to reach land. It scurried onto solid ground, shaking off any residue liquid from its fur. The Beowulf flexed its limbs. Black fur glistened from the moonlight, and loomed over her, a dainty woman. Its mouth opened, taking long-labored breaths, reeking of death and destruction, and its chest reverberated with a soft, purring sound as it growled every time it inhaled. Lifeless, crimson eyes bored into her disgusting red ones. Salem had faced the likes of Grimm before, easily slaying them with the magic she was born with, then later using them as another trial and ending her life. Each one she came across attacked on sight, throwing caution to the wind, and engaged in their destructive nature. But this one didn't. The Beowulf stood over her like a dog was unsure of a new toy.
What are you waiting for, pup?
Salem said with a maddening grin.
Do it. Strike me. Claw out my intestines and gnaw on my flesh.
The Grimm didn't budge, only tilting its head to the side.
Do it!
The creature of darkness moved with swiftness typical of their type, raising its large clawed hands and moving to make good on Salem's plea. She closed her eyes, accepting the tiny peace she would be granted while she recovered from her death. It never came. Salem cracked her eyes open. The Grimm stopped its hand, almost as big as her head, close to her face.
What? Am I not good enough for you to kill?
She snarled, her eyes narrowing. The beast dared insult her?
Do it, pup. Kill me. Fucking kill me.
She seethed, glaring at the nightmarish beast. The Beowulf's hand trembled, jagged teeth clenched into a snarl. It was hesitating. They never hesitated. They always struck first, especially the young and the stupid. Unless...
You can't harm me, can you?
The creature's nostrils flared as it huffed. Salem reached for the Grimm's extended hand, cautious as she tugged it down. It didn't react from her touch, keeping its gaze upon her, like she was expecting something from her.
What is it? What do you want?
The Grimm blinked, tilting its head to the left. Salem's teeth clenched.
Talk, you damn Grimm.
The Beowulf let out a boisterous roar. Salem raised her hands, magic crackling between her fingers. The so-called mindless creature did not attack. It sat on its haunches, its eyes fixed on her.
Why howl when I yell, but not before? Wait!
Salem cupped her chin, brows quirked in mild interest.
Talk.
She said, heedful of her own words. It howled. Her red eyes widened. She couldn't believe it.
Talk.
The Grimm howled.
Sit.
It plopped on the crackling earth.
Stand.
It clambered on its two hind legs and slouched. Salem grinned, chuckling at her newfound power. She could command the Beowulf. She could control the Grimm, monsters that plagued the planet, wreaking havoc, now under her dominion. She reached for the pup, placing her hand under its chin. Soft.
I shall name you. Spring.
Spring didn't react to its newfound name. Not surprising. Spring was still a newborn, lacking intelligence and the skeletal-like armor that came with age. It was fine, though. They would have plenty of time to get to know one another. With a loving smile, she scratched its chin, and Spring wagged its tail. Salem could tell Spring and her would get along swimmingly. She stopped showing affection to her pup. The creature let out an adorable whine. Honestly, it was too cute for its own good. Salem turned her attention to the pool of sludge Spring spawned from. Perhaps she could birth another. It was worth a shot. Spring would be alone if she did not, and no one, Grimm or not, deserved to be alone. Salem exhaled, raising her hands as she closed her eyes. She tried to recall the whirling emotions from before, her hatred for the brother gods for culling humanity, guilt from the role she played in this horrific history that befell her home, sadness from realizing she would be alone. Forever. Her breath hitched, a chill crawling down her spine. There was a soft tug in her core. It was trying to pull more of her being, but her blasted soul was resisting. The useless thing flared like a bright flame, warning her to turn away before it was too late. Her lips reeled into a scowl, releasing a feral growl.
I will not be denied this.
Salem had lost too much of her own damn weak soul to reject her wishes. It was her one and only chance to gain a fathom of what once was. To finally grab hold of the helm of her life and guide her damn self. She surrendered to the freezing clutches of the unknown power. The gentle warmth, similar to that of a campfire, took its last breath, smothered out of existence. Her heart stilled, lips curved into a pleased grin as the last bit of oxygen left her lungs. The biting chill never felt so welcoming before. Salem welcomed the lovely sound of 3 howls with open arms and a bright smile. She opened her eyes, seeing 3 fresh Beowulfs brought to life and clawing through the tar to reach shore. She did it. She summoned Grimm. She was now the mother of Grimm. The power of the god of darkness was now under her thumb. Death was under her mercy. Oh, the irony. To fight against the brother gods and now have the power of both, creating creatures of the night and attaining life immortal. Salem straightened her spine, crossing her hands over each other.
Come.
The 3 pups waddled next to Spring, not used to walking so soon after creation. They stood next to their brethren, all bereft of their bone-white armor. Their armor would come with time, she could not wait for that day. They would mark the start of the new chapter of her life. She glanced at the puppy at the far right.
Your summer.
She looked at the next in line.
Winter.
And then at the last.
Fall.
Salem finished naming her children with a smile. Perfect names for her girls. Ozma and her had always wanted to name their children after the seasons. She was looking forward to being a mother, secretly wishing to be graced with daughters. She couldn't have that anymore, but her pups could be the next best thing. Salem turned away from her children, feeling lighter than she ever did.
Come, girls. Let's go for a walk.
For the first time since the massacre, Salem did not walk Remnant alone. This has been a dramatic reading of Salem's Journey by InariKurenai. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you all so much for listening to a story.